Okay, so we are back. Yeah, whew, Wi-Fi connections, but boom, those child actors, yeah, no, they really did a very, very good job. You know, as I think, especially at the end when Grace is with Ava,
Yes.
that got that went super creepy from like
Yeah.
0 to 100. That was just like, yo, what?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting because the young actress that plays Grace, Alexa Leopold, um, she is the sweetest, most soft-spoken, sprightly child. And so it was interesting to like create this environment where she felt free, like she knew the character, where she could really sort of come out of her shell. As much as I try to keep it very subtle, uh, to play true to the mythology of the story. Yeah, the children in the film are just wonderful. I mean, I'm so grateful that that they felt so free to express themselves in the movie.
Mm. No, yeah, yeah, I was very impressed with that. I, I have to ask, who did the artwork for within the film? Like, as we see the picture of you know,
Yeah, so I had there was multiple artists, and I I originally wanted I was going to go, within the indigenous community and have somebody do it. And then I thought, no, it's a perversion. It's the cult that's doing it, right?
mm,
It's a perversion of something that's so pure. And then I thought, I don't want it, it should come from a different place. It should come from somebody outside of the indigenous community that's trying to replicate something, trying to replicate the occult. And
yeah,
so I went in that direction. And so there's two different local artists that did it. I had given some images of through my research, and obviously, we were blown away. The Without any spoilers, um, there was I was, you know, in some of the artwork that was turned in. Um, I mean, it's just haunting. I mean, I couldn't believe, how incredibly impactful it was.
yeah. No, I was super impressed with that. Yeah, that was very good. Um, so with the rest of the film, right? So
Mhm.
where did like the idea come from to kind of tell this story?
Well, I think the general rule usually is to like write what you know, and that rule can be broken. I mean, I spent last year writing a heist movie, and throughout COVID, while I was cutting Synchrony, and I worked with the LAPD and very closely, and there were so many things I obviously didn't know. Um, this there's usually your storytelling is rooted somewhere within your soul, within your spirit, and this definitely was. So part of the impetus to start writing this story was, a part of it was spending a lot of time in Western Massachusetts, unearthing a lot of the history of atrocities against Indigenous people. Even what's going on right now, where they're in the process of renaming Turner's Falls, which is one of the towns we shot into, to Great Falls because of the dark history behind that. And of course, coming from Canada, we've just, we're learning now of the residential schools and,
Mm,
the tragic, remains that have been found underneath these schools. I mean, it just goes on. And so, I felt like this was a story that needed to sort of come out with me. The paranormal element was the Western Massachusetts and the winter influence on me. But the core of the story of the Sinchanee, of being in search of one's own identity. When I shared my own personal story with some of the with actually, in particular, with Anthony Skyhawk, who is one of the elders at the Massachusetts Center of Native American Awareness, and I shared my journey through my own heritage and discovering, coming to terms with a lot of my lineage and reconnecting with my cousin and whatnot. And he said to me when I shared that, he said, there are so many people in our community that don't actually know. They don't know what tribe they came from. They've so much of that was eradicated over hundreds of years that, we have elders here that just don't know. And he said, welcome home. And it really did hit home for me because, as you see in Will's journey in the movie, he's unaware of what many of the things mean, symbolism to him. He's not emotionally available to that until he is. And so, I feel like it just came from such a personal place. When you're writing by hand and filling journal by journal, sometimes you don't question where this is coming from. You just continue. Try not to edit your thoughts. You'll wait, when you're doing the screenwriting process to get into that, to kind of refine the story. But so I think it was both of those. I think it was both my own personal experience, and I think that it was also my experience in doing my research for that part of the country, especially that part of the state of Massachusetts.
Okay, no, that's cool. And I was definitely, there's so many interesting components to this, right? We got our returning police detective and her lineage, and that she doesn't. It seems that she doesn't fully understand, and then when she does, she realizes the ramifications on her. So we have all of that. There's her partner. Just all of these things come together, and they work within the story. They really do work. I did think it felt like there were some gaps maybe in the story on just in our knowing of what's happened, and time frames and things like that. But when you're creating this, how do you try and keep track of the story? And okay, so we're now at this point, and all right, we're bringing these people in, but their background will affect this, and how you keep
You map it out. I mean, I had mapped it out on a board of the sort of the storyline, not just in my head. So I knew, my editor knew, like, what we were going to do, and then we tried different things of like, I thought it was really important for the audience to see some of these flashbacks to an extent, where I didn't want to show everything, but I felt that it was really important that they had an opportunity to see just what it was like for these kids back in the 90s during this horrific event and what led up to it. I felt it was very important, especially because we come back to it at multiple times throughout the film. And I didn't want to do these throwaway flashbacks of this quick cut of something so flashy and tragic and horrific, and then cut back to present. Or, I felt it was, once we're there, we live in that space of that flashback. And so I feel like, I wanted to give my audience credit. So when you talk about gaps, I wanted to give them credit for being able to fill in their own narrative in those gaps. That was actually intentional, of like, what does that mean to you? Or what do you think that means? And so in the story, when we come back in about the second act again into some of the flashback, the timing of it, Detective Donovan has just gone through this major event. And I thought that was an opportunity story-wise to let the audience, let the characters sort of take a break and go into now, she's on her way home, to go into, well, what is this cold case I'm about to uncover, to revisit? And that to me was the moment in my instinct that I was like, this is where the audience is like, okay, what is she about to uncover? And rather than, the rule is don't tell me, show me, I show the audience.
Yeah, I did think with the flashbacks,
Mm.
I thought you got just the right amount of information there, and it didn't get too, gore porny or anything like that. It was just the right amount for you to just understand this horrific ordeal that took place. So I
Yeah,
really like the way
I
that all
really,
interconnected.
I really, I didn't want this on any level to be like a slasher film. And I think that the way that we deal with these murders through the eyes of a child and in a child's memory of them. Um, I've been in some traumatic events in my life in my childhood, and how I remember them are so probably maybe different from that perspective than what they actually were.
Mm,
Um, and I thought that we needed to respect that, and I thought that that was much more interesting storytelling from the child's perspective, rather than we go into this scenario where it's like blood and guts, and what's happening. When young Will is walking up those stairs towards the sounds, you know exactly what's happening,
yeah.
and in your mind, I didn't. I felt like what you would envision would be far worse than what I could possibly show you, with no matter, with a blank check for a budget, which I didn't have. I had no money to make this film. But I just thought that our imagination is far greater in those pivotal moments.
Mm.
And I felt like staying with him, living within his space and his soul, was far more interesting than going into, you know, the gore of it all, the kind of, as you say, the gore porn.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because yeah, as we're walking up those stairs, you see that fear in him and then just hearing the sounds and
Mhm.
just seeing that,
Yeah.
that's just chilling enough, right? You definitely,
Mhm.
yeah, you don't need anything else. That's just like, ooh, god damn it. But I mean, I think you mentioned so you worked with 10 veterans and a gold star sister in this
Sister,
film, and
yes.
you've set up your production company, um, and that's part of your ethos to help veterans. Like
Yes. Yeah.
where, where has that come from? Like, you know what I mean? Like connecting veterans with films, it's
Mhm.
maybe not that first instinct that you come to. But
Mm.
then when you see things like Black Rifle Coffee, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Of
all of these
course.
other things that
I love
there's
Black Rifle Coffee. Yeah.
yeah, and these don't necessarily, instantly make sense, right? You wouldn't
Right.
put
So,
coffee and
so
veterans
the
together.
short
So
answer is, I feel like in my journey in life as an artist, um, as a human, as a person in my community, I've always tried to contribute.
mm,
I'm always trying to give a voice to the marginalized. Um, when we had the LA riots here, the most recent ones, where there was a lot of protests. My wife and I joined those protests. It was like, what side of history are we going to be on? This is our community that's in pain. And it was adding support to people that feel like they're not being heard,
mm,
and they're not, and they're not. And so this to me was very similar. Like, I've worked in the veteran community now for over a decade. I was one of the original architects of the 22 push-up challenge, which went global to bring awareness to the veteran suicide epidemic. And so, I have a long history. I'm honored to have been accepted within the community. I work every day to earn that privilege. So to me, this was giving opportunities to people that might not otherwise get them. And I did write some of these roles specifically. So the Wayne Cotter role was specifically written for Don McAllister, who is a 27-year veteran, command sergeant major, and obviously plays a very interesting character in my film, but is just a teddy bear in real life. And and Rudy Reyes, who plays Solomon, you know, he's a recon Marine veteran. You know, when they went to cast Generation Kill, which was the best-selling book, it's a brilliant book if you haven't read it, by Evan Wright. They couldn't cast anybody for Rudy's character that was Rudy enough, so they cast Rudy to play himself. And
Okay.
I will tell you, without giving away any spoilers, the scenes that we have by the fire between he and I really allowed him the space to riff of what was coming from his heart. It was just me and him and the fire. And this is a warrior. This is a warrior playing a warrior.
Mm.
And Rudy's part Apache. And I felt like the best direction I could give was to not get in the way, was to allow him that space. So everything he says by that fire is like, just, it's from the heart. And it's so nuanced. It's so beautiful. And I'm so proud of him for feeling comfortable enough to take those risks, to having the courage to be that vulnerable. So, you know, part of my mission, I co-founded Team House Studios with Nate Boyer, who's a former NFLer, Green Beret veteran, was to give these opportunities to veterans. But I think even in our storytelling, you know, my first short film was on World War II, took place on a Nazi labor camp. And I think that I feel like it's intrinsic, you know, innate in my storytelling to try to give a voice to those that don't have one or don't feel that they have one. And so that's where that comes from. Now, the bigger picture story is, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today if American soldiers did not liberate, you know, my grandparents who were on a labor camp. They were Christians that were prisoners of war for 5 years during the war in Poland, and fled to Germany, and then became, you know, immigrants to Canada. So that's my greater debt to pay, is to those men who fought in World War II, that sacrificed those families to make it possible for me to be here. And it's something that I'll be dedicated and committed to for the rest of my life.
No, that's great. But, you know, I think what we see, and I think last year kind of spoke to it as well, with a lot of people will say stuff, but you don't always see the follow through, you know? And I think with setting up the production company, like you're just doing everything you're saying, you know what I mean? It's not just lip service. And I think that's the more powerful thing, that you live by the conviction.
That's very much also the ethos, the MO of you know, a lot of veterans, you know, military community is you know, actions speak louder. And I don't have any outside funding. I don't have any sponsorship hiring veterans. This is, you know, my own mission, shared mission with Nate Boyer. You know, I can't say enough, and I don't want to sound hokey or you know, inauthentic. I mean, from my heart, you know, this is our great honor and privilege. You know, being around these men and women is a great privilege, and you know, hearing their stories, and then obviously what they bring to it as an artist, you know, stepping outside their comfort zone. You know, it's a really interesting thing as a storyteller, but also as a director to kind of mold and craft those performances, to collaborate. And so I'm not a showy person. This is not like, let's have a telethon and hire veterans on a you know, broadcast telethon. This is something that's very personal, and something that, you know, again, my commitment to it will be shown in my actions throughout future projects, and how we can grow and expand, you know, what we're trying to accomplish. And I say that both behind the scenes and in front of the camera and in the storytelling. You know, actually, my third picture, my second film will be the heist film I spoke about that we'll shoot in Western Texas next year. My third film is something that I've been working on for 10 years, researching and developing it. It's called Sheepdog. And that is an exploration into the plight of the veteran, um, returning home from conflict, assimilating back into society, mental wellness, mental health, post-traumatic growth. There's a focus on post-traumatic growth, not so much post-traumatic stress, and how those worlds collide, of living at your greatest. You know, I've been through, as I've mentioned, traumatic events in my life. I've been to therapists and whatnot. And one of the healthiest, the greatest takeaways that I've consistently got is post-traumatic growth, of like, well, how can I grow from this? How can I allow this traumatic or catastrophic event in my life to allow me to grow, to learn from, to make me stronger? And obviously it's not as easy as it sounds in theory, but that's the third film. And I think it's I'm just really proud of the story. I'm so obviously grateful. I sat in front of hundreds of veterans, lived with veterans on their couches, was taken in by their families, and I can't wait to share that story with the world.
When do you think people can expect that one?
Well, my hope, it would be ambitious to say I'd like to have the cameras rolling by the end of the year, by the end of next year, by the end of 2020. That would be my hope.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like a really interesting piece, and it's something that's so relevant. You know, we see it all
especially
the time.
with what's happening in Afghanistan, and a lot of people had forgotten that we were still involved in a 20-year conflict. And in my storytelling, war is always political. No matter what, it's always political. This story is about the men and women, because when you sign up, when you enlist, and then you're in harm's way, it has nothing to do with a politician. It's everything to do with who's to your right and who's to your left, because that in the end is what you're fighting for. All the other stuff, all the hoopla, the media nonsense, all that goes out the window. It's like, that's where you are in clear and present danger. And I hope to pay a great honor to those stories that I was so fortunate to have shared with me over the years.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure. And this heist one too. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Oh boy, the heist. So picture an LAPD detective on the brink of retirement, and a Texas Ranger also on the brink of retirement. And their two worlds colliding after a violent crime is committed where both their children are involved. And it's how those two worlds come together. And so I can't say much more about that, other than I am very grateful to Joe Ward, who I based loosely one of the characters on at the Newton station here in Los Angeles. And thank you to everybody at Shoot and Newton for their help. I've been working with an undercover LAPD detective who I can't name for his safety, but I'm really proud of this story. I mean, I've worked tirelessly on it. It's not just a shoot 'em up film. I'm not inclined to violence in that sense, though there is a lot of action in it. But it's really a story about two families, and two families from such very different backgrounds. And some of it's based on real stories, and some of it's obviously within the realms of fiction. But I'm hoping we're putting everything in place right now, all the key sort of assets to be filming in West Texas, in Big Spring, which is about 4 hours west of Dallas. Spent a lot of time there. My best friend who gave the toast at my wedding, that's his childhood home town. So I think it's going to be, taking place between Los Angeles and West Texas, it's going to make for a really compelling film.
Well, I mean, I'm intrigued from just what you mentioned. You know what I mean? It's just like, well, okay,
Yeah,
so where's this gonna go from here?
Yeah, it's I can't say it enough. It was there's a tremendous amount of work. I mean, I can't show you right now, but behind me here is my board of all the stories of all the different players in the heist film, of
Ooh.
the if you will, the bad guys, the
Mm.
families, all, and how it all. It's kind of like a crime scene board, albeit it's the overlay of my story, and it's been there for a year and a half that I've been piecing it all together. Uh, the You know, how it all connects and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. So with that, do you create actual backstories for your characters, or do you just have a rough outline?
No, I create backstories, but I don't. I would never give the perception that I sit there and go, like, the backstory usually reveals itself as you're writing the character. You feel like you speak in different languages in your head of like, well, they sound
Mm.
that way, they would do this, they would do that. Oftentimes you're pulling it from people you might have met in your life, personal experiences you have, but the backstory gets refined with each draft for sure. So you could start off with, you know, I've with these two families in the heist film, for instance, um, I had an idea, and of course I met this. He's close to retirement, Joe Ward. He's a detective, and there's a lot of interesting things, his frustrations, and you start to peel back the onion, and you're like, oh, where does that come from? Where does that come from? And that helps to inform that backstory. And then there's things that you pull from your own life, your own experiences that you add to that. But I think it's important to have that because I'm also open as a collaborator to allow any of my actors to bring their own backstories to it and share and say, well, this is what I see. This is why I see it this way. What are your thoughts? You know, to
Mm.
get you into that place to fully embody this person. And that's the, you know, the beauty of the collaborative experience. So yeah, I think that that backstory, I mean, and I know as an actor, um, you know, I've had, you know, the good fortune to work with some pretty big heavyweights. I remember working with John Voight on The Five People You Meet in Heaven, which was a film that was based off the best-selling book by Mitch Albom. We, you know, we worked tirelessly on that together. I mean, we got our dialect down. It was a New York dialect that was supposed to be kind of like old world New York. We worked with a guy, a retired firefighter named Pudgy Walsh, who had this beautiful, rich cadence. We would do like audio recordings until we got it down. Then you get into your walk, where our character was a disabled veteran. And so it's just not any kind of limp. There's a reason why you would walk that way. You've got a leg brace. And like you start to build and layer the character all the way up so that when you're, by the time you get to set and you're calling action, my first day on set on that movie, I had to play myself like 20 years older. So they had all this prosthetics on me. And the scene is my wife giving me a birthday gift, which is a watch. And I'm a maintenance worker at at a pier, and I did it in one take, and I didn't know that that was going to happen. I just spent so much time with this character, months, that it was just all there. And when I heard the director say, cut, okay, turning around, meaning for her coverage, we were all like looking up, and I was thinking, like, that's it? It's like, you know, I didn't take it as necessarily a good thing. You know, and John was behind the camera, and he's like, you just have to trust. It's all there. I looked at the monitor. It's all there. And that's the beauty when you're able to spend enough time with the characters and then doing rehearsal and whatnot, you kind of find your ebb and flow within that, and then you can just kind of make beautiful jazz on set.
Yeah, yeah. So with that knowledge, right? Because you've been in this field for
Mhm.
so long, how do you like relay this to the veterans? Do you kind of run through some kind of, I don't know, exercises? Do you do work with them even before you're gonna shoot a film? You know, just to get them into the flow of things. Like, how is that work?
Usually the biggest challenge that with anybody who hasn't acted before is a camera being this close to you, or, you know, 20 feet away with 100 people standing behind it, and you feel like compelled that you have to do something, you feel nervous, and you're being watched. So usually on the most elementary level, it's just being able to like be present right here and forget about everything around you. And from there, I obviously spend personal time with the veterans that we've hired to get to know them, to like get to know their stories. I can't say this enough. My directing style, I don't come from a place of trying to pull somebody's personal story out of their life and manipulate them into getting a performance for a character. I think that it just doesn't work that way. I think that both on an ethical level, but even for the kind of storytelling that I like to do, I like to know that you can go from 1 to 10 at any moment that you wish, but you're always your body is always at a 5, that you also you're centered, and you're present. So typically, there's a lot of discussions that go into the performance well before you ever get in front of the camera. And I feel like that's where a lot of those challenges for a veteran, it's my job to create a safe working environment where the veteran, the actor, feels supported and feels like that they can take some risks. That's all on me to create that environment, to create a collaborative environment where they feel like if they fall, I'm there to pick them up. And that's where you get some of the beauty, the gold within a performance. And I felt like I really achieved that on this film. Even Nate Boyer, who plays the lead detective, I've known Nate.
Oh. Oh. God damn it, people. It has happened again. Just as we are coming towards the end, I feel. But yeah. Oh. Stephen, can you we may not know how long he's known Nate for, people, but either way, it's been super compelling. Oh, do we have
Hear me?
Stephen? Yes.
Okay. If I cut off, we could end on this note. I'll repeat what I was saying. If you're good on connection on your end.
Yeah. No, that'd be great.
Are you good on your connection there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I was just saying we can end on this note. I'll just repeat what I was saying. So, directing Boyer, who I've known for years, Nate plays the lead detective, Detective Carter, in it. Nate had a lot of really great ideas coming into it. He did a lot of research. I had my ideas, how I envisioned and how I wrote the character. And, Nate had to take a pretty big leap of faith to trust me in my direction with him. And I felt like, this beautiful, nuanced, vulnerable performance where rather than going with this sort of typical hard-edged alpha male detective from Boston, that I got a much more vulnerable performance, which I think is way more interesting, of a guy who is kind of grasping at straws. He's estranged from, his ex, single father, on the case, on the trail of this horrific crime, kind of world unraveling. And I feel like, it's like Nate really stepped outside of himself. I mean, it's quite a beautiful performance, and I'm so proud of him for trusting me to take him on that journey that we shared together.
No, that's great, man. Yeah, I feel like everyone really did give some really great performances in the piece, and people will be able to see those performances this Friday, the 8th of October.
They will,
where
and if you're in the
yeah.
UK, you'll get to see it October 29th in the UK. We're screening at the 29th Raindance Film Festival in London on the 28th at the Genesis Theatre in London, so everybody's
Oh,
welcome.
nice.
And I'll be there in person, and so will Lila Lockhart Craner, who was the played Ava in the film. So we will be there to support it. So October 29th in the UK, and in North America, October 8th, this Friday. And it will be around the world, I believe, in the next couple months. So really excited to share this special film with everyone.
Ah, that's great, man. That is terrific. So I hope everyone, yeah, people go check it out. It is definitely an enjoyable watch. And thank you so much for your time, Stephen. I really appreciate
Kevin,
it.
thank you so much. And thank you for your patience with this connection.
These things happen,
Yeah.
man. It's happened to me before, so yeah, I completely understand. Hopefully, we can get you back to talk about the heist film and sleeping dog, sheepdogs.
Sheepdog. Yes,
Yes,
indeed. All right, Kevin, you be good. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you. Be
you
safe.
too, man. Thanks, man.
All
Take
right,
care.
take care.